With the new Bubsy game on the horizon, Bubsy 4D, I do think it is time that we start acknowledging the truth. We start acknowledging the reality of the situation that Bubsy the Bobcat is an enduring 3D mascot character, that he continues to get games, that they're on par with what Sonic the Hedgehog is doing. Bubsy the Bobcat should be considered a relevant 3D platforming mascot character because this thing has endured over the decades to still get new releases today, which is very interesting because considering how Crash Bandicoot is not that. How Crash Bandicoot has never been able to get consistent releases, how his games have never been well received, how nobody gives a shit about Crash outside of the original trilogy, how Crash is just this completely dead IP with no real momentum behind it. Like Crash Bandicoot is a dead IP while Bubsy thrives. And I do want to take a moment to kind of emphasize what this means because this is something that I think we do as a community need to really acknowledge, that we really need to admit to ourselves. Bubsy the Bobcat is a better video game mascot than Crash Bandicoot. Bubsy has more personality. He has actual gimmicks to the character. He has his own setting and world. He has a specific tone he goes for. The games are reasonably good. They were ambitious with Bubsy 3D being a full 3D platformer when Crash Bandicoot was just this weird isometric pseudo 3D Crash Bandicoot wasn't really a 3D platform. So Bubsy 3D was this hugely influential, popular, genre defining game, where the developers tried to create a platforming game in a 3D space with their iconic Bobcat character, Bubsy 3D actually grew and evolved the video game industry. It has a place in history. You cannot say that for anything Crash Bandicoot related. Whenever Crash Bandicoot comes up, it's always the same argument that well, he was big in the 90s. Well, the PlayStation won that console generation. Neither of which are true, of course, but therein lies my point is that Crash Bandicoot is not popular because people actually played the games or like them. Crash Bandicoot is popular because PlayStation fanboys pretended he was popular. That they really levied this guy up to the same level of Sonic and Mario. When in reality, this guy isn't even third place. In reality, he's in dead last. Nobody knows Crash. Nobody talks about him. Nobody remembers anything about him. The setting, the world, his origin story, that developers. How many people do you even know that this was a Universal IP, not a PlayStation IP? How many people do you know who acknowledges this wasn't an internal PlayStation thing? Crash is the earliest example I can think of of Sony astroturfing a brand into relevancy because nobody played Crash Bandicoot back in the day. Nobody thought it was better than what Nintendo was doing at the time. Nobody with any ounce of credibility looked at that character, looked at that game, and thought it was some huge genre defining thing. Anybody who knew what they were talking about were playing Donkey Kong Country. They were playing Mario 64. They were playing Ocarina of Time. They were not playing Crash 3 and its weird wave race rip-off minigame. They weren't playing Crash Tag Team Racing, which is just a knockoff of Diddy Kong Racing. They weren't they weren't bothering with this half-assed mascot character that looks like a cereal box mascot. Okay, nobody cares about Crash Bandicoot. The only reason people talk about this asshole today is because millennials were sold a remastered version of the original trilogy, bought it, pretended the game was like the Dark Souls of platformers, and then proceeded not to buy the sequel. Proceeded to not buy Crash Bash. They no, Crash Team Rumble, excuse me. You can't even keep your Crash games straight because they're all so terrible. Crash Team Rumble. They put out new Crash games after that original trilogy remastered. Like, and there was just no interest in them. None. And fanboys love to chalk it up to like development decisions, like redesigning Tana and like just the genre of Team Rumble in general. But like the reality is Crash just has no potential for growth. Like nobody cares about Crash other than people who like owned a PlayStation but did not own a Nintendo 64 back in the 90s. Like that's the issue. That's the core problem that people have with a Crash. Like that's the problem with this brand is that like people aren't interested in this series as a concept. Like something like Mario can reinvent itself constantly. Like it can go from 2D to 3D, it can be a kart racer, it can be a party game. Like Mario succeeds in all of that. It's even branched out into strategy and RPGs at this point. Like but Crash could never escape the PlayStation hellscape that he was like spawned into. Like he could never get out of like those narrow corridors, like just the repetitive gameplay, the lousy level design. Like nobody who has actually committed himself to beating these games would ever call them great platforms. And I think that it's very telling how something like Bubsy seems to have more genuine enthusiasm and hype behind it than something like Crash Bandicoot because people actually played Bubsy. People actually like know the character. The character actually has an identity. He has a vibe. He's actually notorious for one reason and one reason alone, in that he sucks. But that in and of itself makes it endearing. Crash doesn't even have that. Crash falls short of Bubsy in every single conceivable metric. Crash Bandicoot is complete trash. Trash Bandicoot. Trash in the can. Like it's like who really who are who have been fooling themselves over the past 30 years? Like I've seen the developers like try and claim that they were bigger than Mario in the 90s. I've seen them claim that they innovated like, platforming, basic platforming mechanics, and they really do need to be called out for this because I think Bubsy has done far more for the platforming genre than Crash ever has. At the very least, they showed everyone how not to make a 3D platformer. Bobsy the Bobcat is an iconic video game character, and Crash Bandicoot is not.